So let's stay with that story and explore it a bit further, the whole phenomenon of recent mass shootings and gang violence in parts of the Western Cape. We're joined now by Parliament's Portfolio Committee on Police Chairperson Ian Cameron. Good evening to you and thank you for your time. Understanding and accepting that no single intervention could ever possibly be the panacea or, the silver bullet to all the gang violence and crime. But the question remains, and it seems to be amplifying, at least as far as I can see, as to why it is that nearly 6 months since the SANDF members were first deployed in this phase of Operation Prosper, the very crimes they are meant to be targeting appear to be continuing unabated. Do you have a clear insight as to what's happening?
Yeah, so, over the past weekend in the region, we've seen just over 30 murders, certainly no less than 30 murders. Obviously, some of those are included within those mass shooting numbers that you've already mentioned. There has been no real decrease in mass shooting since the SANDF has been deployed. Operation Prosper is not prospering. It hasn't shown any real result in terms of curbing any form of gang violence or extortion group violence. Whatever the case may be, it literally seems like some weeks murders on the increase. Last week, or the week before last, we had over 100 murders in the region in the space of 7 days. So things are certainly not looking any better because of it. And I honestly believe it's because we're fighting blind. I think that, unfortunately, on ground level, criminals are aware when the police are going to go for them, whether they are tipped off or whether it's just poorly coordinated. And I think a lot of the work is haphazardly done. We lackadaisically stop in front of a house before we search it, but it's not something that it.
Mr. Cameron, for some reason we seem to have lost your audio there. Let's see if we can work on it and see if we can get you back. But as we try and do that, let me move on. You mentioned the idea of fighting blind, and it leads me to the question of where then was the flaw in how this Operation Prosper was perhaps designed or perhaps implemented? Was the flaw in the design of the deployment?
No.
Did, for instance, the deployment... Mr. Cameron, I wonder if you can hear me. Can you hear me now?
I can hear you.
Apologies, we lost your audio for a moment, but we got the gist of your first response at the start of this conversation. And I wanted to pick up on a theme that you mentioned about fighting blind, in terms of the SANDF deployment. And the question I want to ask you that's related to that is, was the flaw then in the initial design of the deployment? Did the deployment emphasize, for instance, one aspect of the fight against at the expense of another? For example, patrols and visibility over intelligence-driven, police-led and SANDF-backed targeted operations?
Well, I think neither. We haven't actually seen the numbers of soldiers that we needed to have to really destabilize gang activity. So that's point number one. Point number two is that there is no intelligence-led operation. Yeah, we've had some successes here and there with a reasonable drug find or a seizure or some firearms, but nothing has seen, an impact on the arrest of kingpins, stopping entire gangs from doing what they do.
So what happens now? What are some of the available alternatives? A couple of days ago, I think we were reflecting on even the budget that is required for Operation Prosper not having been advanced by the relevant departments. Are you able to confirm that? And does it require that we go back to the drawing boards, in a manner of speaking, around this deployment?
Yeah, I've also heard about the budget. We haven't met on it properly yet. You see, I think it's a very important question that you ask. You framed it 100% correctly. There's a matter of introspection that needs to be done by both the South African Police Service and the SANDF in this case. We keep asking for more money. Every year when we go through the budget process, more money is demanded or requested. But unfortunately, we look at, for example, fruitless and wasteful expenditure. The previous financial year, just in supply chain management in the police, fruitless and wasteful expenditure or regular expenditure increased by 140%. Now, it would be unfair to then constantly say, I need more money, but I'm not able to act responsibly with the money that I already have to my disposal. think you understand what I'm saying. So we need to ensure that there's good custodianship of the funds that is given to the relevant departments. And unfortunately, up until now, the proof has not been in the pudding. We haven't seen a real decent outcome. This coming Friday, it's good that you and I are having this discussion tonight. Friday ahead of us, we're actually doing a joint oversight visit to parts of or specific units of the police as well as the SANDF regarding Operation Prosper, to go and determine for ourselves, what the ground level realities are that the members face. We've obviously been on the ground in some of the gang-ridden areas and so on. I've spoken to you about that before, but we're going to now approach a little bit from another angle. But yes, unfortunately, I think leadership has been significantly lacking. There is no real coordinated strategy, even though they say otherwise. We can see through the results that it is not successful at the moment.
Lastly, let me ask you for your own reflections on, given that we face this, we're on this burning platform, as it were, around gang violence, mass shootings and murders on a day-to-day basis that are not necessarily mass shootings. Can we afford to park the conversation around the socioeconomic underpinnings of gang violence and some of what we see in those communities, or do we not have that luxury, almost as if while we amplify the response, the tactical response, the policing response, the SANDF response, the community element also needs to be coming up quite sharply?
No, I mean, you can never divide them. I always say that when, for example, we speak about crime statistics, I think it's unfair to say it's just the Minister of Police that should sit there. You should have the Minister of Social Development and Justice there as well. It must be an integrated effort. But that being said, if we look at the extortion crisis, for example, that's not just a socioeconomic issue. These are criminal predators that prey on more vulnerable communities, and they prey in areas where it's significantly more challenging for police to track and trace suspects after they've committed these really horrific things like some of these mass shootings. But no, you can't separate the two. Obviously, from my point of view and the portfolio I'm in, we mainly focus on the policing element. But you're 100% correct that the socioeconomic efforts also plays a role. What I must say, though, is that the level of brutality that we're seeing is very difficult to blame on socioeconomic elements. The cruelty and brutality that goes along, especially with some of the extortion-related crimes, is far beyond, blaming socioeconomic circumstances. In fact, if you look at some of these people that commit these crimes once arrested, they actually live lavish lives. Many of them not poor at all, not struggling at all. They literally are evil criminal predators, and they flourish on preying on vulnerable citizens.
All right. Let's leave it there for this evening. Parliament's Portfolio Committee Chairperson, the Portfolio Committee being the one on policing, that's Ian Cameron, reflecting on the violence that continues almost unabatedly in the Western Cape, but also in other gang hotspots, as you saw in Reicha Park in the last few days.